Hello. Does the narcissist really want to change? But I can change. That is a comment often said by certain subschools of narcissist. This is a phrase so often said by some of our kind. You will, more likely than not, have heard this sentence at some point during your entanglement with us. Usually it is uttered as a part of a preventative Hoover, when the narcissist detects, often instinctively, that there is a considerable risk that you are going to depart the formal relationship, and in so doing, threaten the prime aims, particularly fuel and control. Sometimes the narcissism detects this, other times it is more obvious from the things that you are doing or saying. Such a comment also makes an appearance as part of the initial grand Hoover, which is utilised to draw you back in, should you have managed to take those first steps towards escape. You will also hear it in benign follow-up Hoovers, although following the affliction of time, you are more likely to hear the cousin of, "But I have changed." Occasionally, it appears within the devaluation phase, following an unpleasant episode, as part of the further manipulation to keep you bound to the narcissist, under control and providing fuel. Accordingly, you will see that its use appears at different stages of the narcissistic dynamic. So when you're in a relationship of some sort with a narcissist, usually romantic, and the narcissism detects that you are perhaps on the cusp of leaving, or you're threatening to leave, or you're thinking about ending the relationship, it causes the narcissist to issue the manipulation of, "But I can change." So for instance, if you are listing a litany of faults of the narcissist, and the narcissist's usual responses of denial and deflection are not working, and it appears that control cannot be asserted over you, there is a risk to your continued position as perhaps the intimate partner primary source, or an intimate partner secondary source, or even a non-intimate secondary source in some scenarios. Then the narcissist will say, "But I can change," in order to prevent you ending the relationship, moving outside of the influence of the narcissist. In other instances where you have escaped or just escaped the narcissist, then the narcissist often uses the initial grand Hoover to pull you back in. This is a sustained occasion of repeated Hoovers of significant intensity, usually applied as against the intimate partner primary source, but can be against secondary sources as well. And the initial grand Hoover will be covered in a separate video. Benign follow-up Hoovers follow after the cessation of the formal relationship. So for example, it might be that you've been disengaged from, the narcissist got rid of you, or it might be that the narcissist has placed you on the shelf, where you're a secondary source, or it might be that you escaped and the preventative Hoover failed, this initial grand Hoover failed, and therefore later on you received this benign follow-up Hoover of, "But I have changed," to try and demonstrate that the narcissist is not what they once were, and that is designed again to draw you back into the formal relationship. The subject of Hoovers in terms of preventative ones, the initial grand Hoover, and follow-up Hoovers will be addressed in separate material, but it is important to recognise that the statement, "But I can change," or "But I have changed," appears within part of those Hoovers. To some, the sentence contains the magical words that the empath is waiting to hear. The empathic trait of the desire to fix, to heal, and to repair means that an empath longs for that acknowledgement by the narcissist that they can alter their behaviour, make new and fresh choices, learn from the mistakes and choose a better path. The declaration of a willingness to change is welcomed by certain empaths, and they selflessly accept this statement, believing that all people have some good within. It is a case of recognising this and applying a different approach. To others, the words are welcomed, but with caution. Perhaps the devaluing behaviour has been so deep and savage that the recipient is wary, fearful of their hopes being raised too soon. Their inherent desire to see change for the good of both people in the relationship wants to agree to grab this offer with both hands and see to its implementation. But dare they hope that it can be done? Indeed they can, for in that moment, as the cool, hard logic of caution makes its presence felt, it becomes overrun by the soaring emotional thinking that cries out, he has realised, he knows he has done wrong, he wants to make amends, he wants to change. The emotional thinking corrupts your empathic trait of the desire to heal and fix. This isn't applicable to all empaths, but those that have it as one of their stronger traits. The emotional thinking then brings forth those twin sisters of pressure, hope and guilt. The empath, chained to the concept of hope, sincerely wishes that the person they love will change and become a better person. Guilt also weighs in, whispering, what if it is genuine? What if he can change and you do not give him a chance? What a bad person you will be for failing to give him that chance. Invariably, the emotional thinking wins out. Rarely will this protestation of being able to change go unheeded. Rarely will the opportunity not be given to the narcissist who states that this can be done. It is only the informed, those who can apply cold, hard logic and resist the rising tide of emotional thinking, who can repel the allure of those enticing words. For everyone else, they are drawn into allowing the narcissist a further opportunity to keep the victim, in place. Yet, who is it of the narcissistic brethren who issues this plea? What is meant by it? And can it really happen? You will rarely hear it from the lesser narcissist. He sees no reason to change. He or she does as they want. If he smashed up the house or physically attacked you, well, it was your fault that it happened, and once the ignited fury is abated, the best you will get is that the reset button has been pressed and nothing is said about the previous behaviour. The statement of change might be issued usually by upper lesser type A if that individual faces a fuel crisis, and in absolute desperation it is blurted out in order to prevent the cessation of the intimate partner primary source or non-intimate partner primary source departing. But come the morning after, the intention will have evaporated and any suggestion of change will be rejected. This last-ditch utterance of, but I can change, might apply to all of the 4 subschools of lesser, but if it is going to be used at all, it would most likely be found by the upper lesser type A. Notwithstanding that, however, once it's been used and if it achieves control, then this suggestion of change will shortly be rejected. The crisis has been averted, control has been asserted, the wound healed and fury abated, and the entitled lesser is not going to make those changes, not when of course it was your fault all along. If the narcissist is then reminded of his intention, he will brush it to one side with deflection or denial, or alternatively park it by saying he will look into it, that he's busy with something else at the moment, but you can talk later, that he has to go to work, that he has someone to see and you will be left dangling. He will not return to the discussion about making a change or seeking help. And, often fearing a further explosive episode, you do not press the issue further, and there the matter is left. You will rarely hear it from the greater narcissist. He sees no reason to change either. Oh, the greater knows what is happening and knows what is done out of a necessity, and it is what must be done. Those needs superior to yours require this behaviour. If you cannot accept it, well, the greater can easily find someone else who will, because after all, the greater is a considerable prize, the champion, and the ultimate governance of control, and therefore it's your loss. The greater will not issue this plea as a preventative Hoover or such like to stop you leaving. True, he, like any narcissist, will not want his primary source to escape. This is not just a matter of fuel provision, but often more of an issue of pride and superiority. After all, the extensive fuel matrices of the greater school and the ultra means that even if the primary source had the audacity to escape, we have plenty of other sources to turn to in the meanwhile. However, what we will not want is to suffer the wounding of this primary source escaping. We will want to stop it. And invariably we use charm and threat to achieve this. Not that the plea that I will change is beneath us. The only time that you might hear these words uttered by the greater or ultra is purely because we see the opportunity for more Machiavellian behaviours through manipulating our victims by engendering false hope. We see the opportunity to increase tradecraft through agreeing to, for instance, engage in therapy. We do not see it as a chance to change, but rather as an opportunity to learn more about ourselves. And why not, since we are such fascinating creatures? We see it as an opportunity to understand more about our ways and indeed take on the challenge of therapists and the like. If we agree to changing our behaviour and enlisting external advice and assistance, we will also lay down terms and conditions for this occurring in accordance to further our own agendas. You will, however, never hear the greater narcissist or ultra use the phrase, "but I can change," as part of some desperate plea. That is very much beneath us. Accordingly, this leaves us with the school which uses this manipulation the most often. Far more often than the other schools, and that is, of course, the mid-range narcissist. The mid-ranger uses this manipulation for the following reasons. 1. He invariably sees himself or herself as a good person, especially mid-range. Their perspective means they genuinely regard themselves as decent people, and therefore, since they are decent, they will, well, do the decent thing and look at making a change. 2. They regard themselves as giving, and they are prepared to make that sacrifice if it means saving the relationship. 3. They often consider themselves to be something of a tortured soul, particularly middle-range type B. They have their demons. There is something eating away at them and they wish to address it. 4. They need to be saved, and you are the person who can save them. They lack the pig-headed arrogance of the lesser or the sneering superiority of the greater or ultra. What is behind those driving factors? Number 1, the narcissistic perspective. Mid-rangers consider themselves the ones who do good, and it is the other people who cause the problems. Because they are so good, they will prove that by addressing the issues which have been raised. This is not because they actually believe there is anything wrong with them in terms of culpability, but rather it is actually an opportunity for them to show the world that they are good, and it is other people who are the problem. It is the maintenance of the facade, and in a way a pity play. Blame shifting also. It's their fault, not mine. I can show there's nothing wrong with me. I can show that I can make adjustments. They are the problem. They are the ones that will not alter. 2. This is the victim perspective, particularly prevalent amongst mid-rangers coming to the fore. The world is a horrible place, and no matter how much they try to help others, the world keeps trying to bring them down. But that doesn't matter because, guess what? They will rise above it. And they will be the one who takes one for the team, who makes the sacrifice and does so for the greater good. 3. This is the victim perspective once again. They do not see that they are disordered. They do not recognise that they are manipulative. They are incapable of doing so because they have no insight or awareness. They do, however, regard this whole concept of being a tortured soul as a magnificent device for drawing fuel. It is, in fact, a subtle form of triangulation. Sympathy, concern, and compassion all come flowing. This is not an acknowledgement, understand, that there is anything wrong with the mid-ranger. He cannot see it. But rather, he blames the chemical imbalance, or the corruption of his soul, or the demon, or whatever it might be, because blame shifting is a key defense mechanism, and blaming you, the neighbours, the weather, something that doesn't actually exist, or an intangible concept will all work for him. He is not accepting that those are part of him. His narcissism is saying it's actually something separate to him, and therefore blames it as the problem, and therefore denies accountability. Number 4, this is the victim perspective once again, but also part of the sympathy grab for attention. The mid-ranger wishes to draw pity and compassion, but then also be revered, for he is the fallen hero, has been saved, and is able to rise once more. Part of the magical thinking that plays out in the mid-ranger's mind. The middle mid-rangers A and B and upper mid-ranger have sufficient cognitive function to recognise that their behaviour does indeed cause a problem. This is where many victims, understandably, are fooled into thinking that the narcissist is actually showing insight. Indeed, this often causes the victim to either think that the narcissist is not a narcissist, or that he is, but some change can be effective. The middle mid-range or upper mid-range may acknowledge that his or her actions cause hurt and problems. However, he or she will never accept ownership of the hurt and problems. For instance, they might say, "I know that when I disappear for a few days you are worried sick, but I need space because you are always pestering me." Or, "I understand that you are hurt when I say certain things, but I am under pressure at work at the moment, and you aren't helping when you question me about why I'm home late." They can see the consequence, but they will not own the consequence. They are not configured to do so. Ownership of the consequence would be giving away control, and that is contrary to why the narcissism operates. As is always the case, the uninformed victim accepts the third-party explanation as to the cause of the errant behaviour, or, even more usually, self-flagellates, and the victim blames him or herself. So the cause of the problem is regarded as pressure at work, or the pestering the victim, when actually it is not. The mid-ranger will state he can change, and moreover, he will also act on the declaration, which again sows the seeds of false hope, and ensures the victim remains in situ and providing fuel. This is just a further part of the manipulation. The mid-ranger may become more attentive, does not dole out silent treatments, removes the manipulations, and stops sulking for a few weeks. This is a respite period. And the mid-range narcissist has implemented this because when you said you would not leave, you became painted white again because you gave him control. You succumbed to that need for control, and your gracious behaviour also provided fuel. The golden period returns, and this is what powers his altered ways. It is not because there is any recognition that he must change because it hurts you. The alteration is because you have done what he wanted. Thus, the black and white thinking makes you white once more, and this is what keeps devaluation at bay, but only for a while. Naturally, the unwitting victim, having seen changes effected, but not knowing the real reason behind them, is conned into thinking that these changes can happen again. And therefore, when the plea, "but I can change," is made at a later time, the victim is swamped by hope, because it happened before. Thus, surely it can happen again, and thus the cycle continues. If you return to the formal relationship through an initial Grand Hoover or a benign follow-up Hoover, you will then be painted white once more, and you get the golden period back, which creates the illusion of changed behaviours, until, of course, it tarnishes once again. The insidious, manipulative manner of the mid-range narcissist means that these changes come in many forms. He or she will alter actions at home. The affair is stopped. The intimate partner secondary source is shelved as your respite golden period draws the narcissist back to you. The narcissist helps out. He shows that inkling of charm once again. The narcissist will, of course, herald his newfound redemption to third parties, because this will also enable him to assert control, gather fuel, and maintain the facade, and of course accords with his complete conviction that he is a good person. This will also provide him with ammunition to hurl at you at the appropriate time, in that he made the changes, and if things are falters, then it has to be your fault. The mid-ranger will readily attend therapy sessions as part of this pretend change. This allows him to do several things. 1. Show you he is a willing and good person, and thus you receive a benign manipulation to assert control over you. 2. He can maintain the facade. Dawn wanted me to go to therapy, and because I love her so much, it was the least I could do. Now tell me how wonderful a husband I am. 3. He will use the therapy sessions to advance his own agenda. The role of the narcissist in therapy is something that can be covered in further material, but, succinctly here, often the victim will not know what is discussed owing to confidentiality. Therefore, the mid-ranger, convinced of his own goodness and lack of culpability, will manipulate the therapist, and will do so convincingly a lot of the time. Thereafter, the mid-ranger will tell the victim that actually the therapist said that the victim is the abuser and that the narcissist is the victim. This might in fact be true, because the therapist has been conned, or it might be an exaggeration of the observations of the unwitting therapist, or a complete fabrication on the part of the narcissist. Whatever it is, this will leave the victim undermined. Such is the conviction of the narcissist. Ally that with the fact that the victim has seen some changes, their own eroded self-worth and reduced critical thinking, and it comes as no surprise that the victim is confused or even believes what the narcissist is saying. 4. The narcissist can hold it over the victim. I did as you asked and got some help. They told me there is no issue, which basically translates into, now you owe me, and I'm going to ensure I extract that debt from you repeatedly. But remember, that is what is being believed in the unconscious. The narcissist, the unaware mid-ranger, doesn't know the real reason why he's doing this. The desire to change is motivated by entirely different reasons than you realise, and the desire that is expressed to you by the mid-range narcissist is not genuine. That is what the narcissism has allowed him to think. The real reason why the supposed change has been effected is to gain the prime aims from you, to control you, chiefly, then obtain fuel, carriage traits and residual benefits. The change is always short-lived, never permanent, and any and all behaviours associated with it, no matter how genuine you may think they are, no matter how earnest the pleading, no matter how many tears are spilled, and the middle mid-range type B will turn on the waterworks. It's all part of a manipulation. Narcissists cannot and will not change. It is important that you grasp that understanding, so that when you hear, "But I can change," cool, hard logic prevails, and you resist the misleading allure of hope. People are inherently optimistic, empathic people even more so. But the dark side of this hope is vulnerability, and our kind, and in particular, the mid-ranger, can't unconsciously on that and exploit it to your detriment. Thank you for listening.